Well, hello, trainers. Welcome to another podcast. Here we are on our third recording because the first recording when we started, Niantic decided that they're going to change the Mega Master League week to Master League Premier, and man, I was honestly ready for that league because it's been almost 2 years, give or take, since we played that league, and we had some spice then, which was kind of funny to use Primal Groudon with Solar Beam, and there wasn't as many Megas and Primals at the time, and I thought this go around was going to be something great because the last time when we did have it, there was a glitch going around where you can Primal Mega 3 Pokemon on a team as opposed to 1, and ever since, I'm assuming they have not fixed that glitch. So here we are jumping into Master League Premier. So yeah, we're gonna just jump into this episode rather quickly because, you know, I'm just recording from my office instead of the car because I already spent half my lunch break trying to record Mega Master League, and now we're going to scramble around trying to figure out picks for Master League Premier. And honestly, Master League Premier is one of those leagues where people either love it or hate it, and for the prime reason, if people don't really think outside the box too much, it can be rather RPS type of league, which could be the case more than anything, but I'm just going to try to keep it as simple as possible because the league hasn't really changed too much in terms of teams that you can recognize. There's a few new Pokemon since the last season or so with the buffs and the new moves that were introduced to certain Pokemon. And yeah, besides that, a lot of the stuff is rather similar. So what we'll probably do is just name off some of the top Pokemon I can think on top of my head because PvPoke as of right now doesn't have the rankings for Master League Premier. So we're going to come up with that and then some core or some teams to probably pay attention to because it's really going to stumble down to a couple Pokemon. And as long as you can kind of go with the team recognition, the team comps that you can read, then you can kind of adopt and accommodate your playstyle against that. And then with Master League Premier, more than anything, another thing to keep in mind is it's the type of league that, depending on where you're at ELO-wise, it's really a best judgment to kind of determine your first set or two, the type of teams that you're encountering, and then to come up with a team to counter those teams. Because Master League Premier, it goes on rotation relatively quickly, within a day, within a couple hours, depending on when you actually play, when teams do switch. And you want to kind of be on the head of the curve in terms of team composition, so you're not getting quote-unquote RPS as much. So without a doubt, we'll jump into it. With what I remember for the most part, for this rotation that we're going to probably see, and at least it's been pretty popular back a season or two, is seeing Waterfall Gyarados Double Fairy, which usually tends to be the double charm. Could be the Togekiss, could be the Sylveon, but that team became such a popularity, and we kind of see a little bit of that in Master League Open with Kyogre Double Charm or Kyogre Double Fairy. But Gyarados is one of those top picks on top of Snorlax and Florges. You know, those three Pokemon are very flexible in the Master League Premier battles because you can, or in the Master League meta, Premier, meta, because, they have a lot of flexibility and they're good generalist type of Pokemon that you can put them together and you can win a lot of matches if you know how to manage your energy and manage like the team compositions that you face from your opponent. But first off, like I said, for a team to have Florges, Snorlax, and Gyarados seems to be a very strong team. I can almost argue it's still pretty strong now, but it's probably not as strong as it used to be because of the introduction of Rhyperior and also Annihilate, which is the two other Pokemon that you want to pay attention to. And the third one, which is not really that much difference, but did get a buff this go around, is Primarina. There we go. Boy, I'm going to be stumbling a little bit today. But yeah, with Hydro Cannon being a new moveset to have on this Pokemon, you're definitely going to see that core. That core, Rhyperior and Prima, it's going to be a thing. We see it in Master League Open often, and you're going to see it in Master League Premier. It's not going to be anything different. Expect to see Rhyperior Double Fairy or Rhyperior with Prima with a Charmer, which tends to be Florges in my assumption at this point, but you could probably throw Togekiss back there and you'll probably be just as fine, or even Sylveon. So those are the top teams I can think of right now that's going to be very influential on top of your dragons and things that are going to counter Rhyperior and Prima. So one of the Pokemon that I love to use personally, and it has its core breaking kind of, I don't know, label, would be Magnezone. Magnezone has always been a very strong pick since the very beginning of Master League Premier. Still Wild Charge and Mirror Shot's going to be the go-to movesets, personally, because I like to run Spice every once in a while. Don't really recommend it, but if you just want to have fun, Shadow Magnezone with Zap Cannon is just a funny thing to use in Master League Premier. But let alone that, I think Magnezone is still a very strong pick because you see a lot of Gyarados, you still see a lot of Prima. The Waterfall still has a lot of play against Magnezone. You can still be able to have a lot of play against it. Feraligator's another Pokemon in this meta now. It's going to be pretty strong. With Shadow Claw, Hydro Cannon, it's very, very fast, and it can probably flip switch in most situations. It's going to put pressure against the Rhyperior, and then you're going to have Ice Beam for the most part. I don't think you want to run Crunch in this meta, but Ice Beam will be the other move, which again helps against the Dragon types because Dragonite is still very strong. You have Goodra, which is kind of pretty good. Maybe not the stronger dragon, but you have the option of Draco or Thunder Punch. I still think Aqua Tail is a move as a must-have, but having Draco, Thunder Punch, Power Whip, if you really want to throw off a Rhyperior, that could be a thing. So, yeah, going back to things that are going to probably counter that core would also be Golisopod. With Shadow Claw, X's, or Liquidation, it's going to have play against Rhyperior. Now, yeah, Rock Wrecker is not going to be very well against a Golisopod, but, still having the water movesets and still resisting the mud slaps, it's going to be a good thing. And same thing for Prima as well, too. Other things that I probably haven't really pinpointed yet is Annihilate. I think with Counter and Rage Fist, it's going to be a pretty decent, I would say, closer, maybe lead, depending on what you kind of see. Skeledirge is being another ghost type is probably a good pick too. If you get away from Rhyperior, I think it's still another good pick against a Snorlax. Again, Snorlax being a good generalist, a good safe swap. Annihilate and Skeledirge kind of has that nice answer to Snorlax because it doesn't have much pressure besides possibly having Earthquake, which could be a moveset that some trainers do use. Skeledirge is still with Draining Kiss, so it has play against the Dragon types if need be, and you want to pay attention to its upcoming Community Day with Blast Burn. It might have some more play against the Steel types because Metagross is still a thing. Excadrill, not too sure if that's going to be much of a thing because Rhyperior kind of took its replacement there, but yeah, I still think Skeledirge is going to be a pretty decent pick. What else? Thinking about other ground types, Ursaluna is going to be another strong pick in Master League Premier. I've seen it in the last rotation where we seen Florges, Ursaluna, and Rhyperior. Funny enough, one of my old faction friends used that team in Master League Open and managed to hit pretty close to expert with it. So I know it's going to be a very strong pick for Master League Premier. But Pokemon like Avalugg, I think, is still going to be pretty fun to use. Now with the Ice Fang buff, you can go with the regular Avalugg or the Hisui Avalugg. I think both of those will have play. Surely, you don't want it to be faced against Metagross or I forgot like the other Pokemon that doesn't want to really see. But I mean, it's besides that, like Avalugg kind of has a lot of play. Body Slam on the regular one. You could run Crunch or Avalanche as well. So I think those are all pretty strong picks. What else? What else am I missing? Golden Go, I think, is another fun Pokemon to use. Having Shadow Ball and Focus Blast, it's going to have a lot of play against, at least some pressure against Rhyperior because of Focus Blast, as well as your normal types. Focus Blast is still very strong. Shadow Ball is good against all the Psychic types, and Astonish having the fast move is pretty good. Being weak to Fire, I would say using a Dragon would be a good answer. So, like a core of of Golden Go and Dragonite would be pretty good. Let's see. I think we're missing some fighters. It's kind of funny. I'm not too sure. Like, I remember Conkeldurr and Machamp having quite a bit of play, and I've seen trainers sometimes pair it up with Garchomp and then Togekiss, or at least a fairy type like Florges. So I can kind of see that being a thing here nor there. But I think with Conkeldurr and Machamp, you want to really be strategic with your energy management. Having the Stone Edge moveset's going to be very vital against the flying types, and then pacing to your your close combat or your karate. No. It's going to be a cross chop would be a switch between the two for your pace, for your movesets there against your battles. I think those two are not going to be as relevant. Maybe Conkeldurr because it has a little bit more bulk, but maybe Shadow Machamp would have some odd play against some of the flying types, and it has a little bit more of the spammy movesets with the cross chop against the normal types, potential Magnezones, or anything that's going to be possibly weak against fighting types. The other thing that I can think on the top of my head that would be more of a spice pick, but would be pretty viable, would be Electivire, the shadow form, not the regular one, and also Hippowdon. I think Hippowdon with Weather Ball and Earth Power is going to have a lot of play against your ground types and also the flying types. Weather Ball is really, really spammy, so you can either bait or chip against the flying types. I think Hippowdon, if I'm not mistaken, has Ice Fang and Thunder Fang, so that could be another sweet little move there, because I like to run some odds movesets sometimes, and I think if people take away Sand Attack and go with Ice Fang, you might trip up some Rhyperiors and other dragon types, and that can get you an edge there with that. So I remember running Hippowdon with Magnezone because I thought them two were pretty cool dynamic. I don't remember what I paired it in the end with, but I think any flexible meta type Pokemon can work as a third. You can probably go with Gator, because if you go zone lead, you're going to be weak against fighting or fire types, if anything. So I think either a Gator, a water type, a dragon type would be a good fit. And Hippowdon, again, being weak to water and ice, I would say you want to have maybe some potential coverage. So again, like water would be kind of good as its third, maybe a Gyarados as well too. Actually, yeah, Gyarados might be a good pick, because Magnezone and Gyarados Waterfall kind of go together really, really well. Again, Gyarados is a good safe swap, so I could say Gyarados. If you come up against a Gyarados with Dragon Breath, at least you have an answer with your Magnezone. But yeah, I think those three kind of mesh pretty well. Let's see what else I can think of. Another Pokemon kind of fell off the face of the earth a little bit, might have some play if you play it out right, would be Haxorus. The question would be, would you still run counter? Probably, because the other moveset that you could run is Dragon Tail. And I still think Breaking Swipe and Night Slash is still the go-to moves. It does know Surf. Seen it once in a while where people run Surf. Might work against Rhyperior, who knows? I think it knows Earthquake as well too, which can throw some trainers off as well. So something to consider about, but Haxorus has a lot of movesets, and I think it's still kind of viable, but you just have to think about what things to kind of pair it up with. And I think, again, I think before it used to be Metagross Double Dragon, which could have been like Dragonite and Haxorus, or even so it was like Garchomp and Metagross, because Garchomp used to be a pretty viable pick, and then it got hard countered pretty bad with Togekiss. Which, fun fact, Garchomp has Fire Blast, so if you want to run some spice, you can, but newsflash for that is between Dragon Tail and Fire Blast, it does not knock out a Togekiss, so keep that in mind. Some other Pokemon that I could probably consider before we jump to some random cores, because I've been naming some cores as I go, is Arcanine. I've been seeing sometimes trainers in the past rotations run Fire Fang or Snarl. I think Fire Fang would probably be the preferred move with Wild Charge. It has Flamethrower, but I know it also has Psychic Fang, so maybe the Fire Fang, Psychic Fang kind of core would work. You might potentially get some shield, so then the Wild Charge would be a little bit more super effective if you landed a Psychic Fang. So one of those things that could be kind of interesting. And Mamoswine's another pick too, which it can be kind of interesting using either Powder Snow or Mud Slap. It does know Mud Slap, so don't forget about that. It has Ancient Power, which is a legacy move, but I think High Horsepower and Avalanche are going to be the go-tos. a little squishy, but I still think it's a very, very strong, viable pick. I think, if I'm not mistaken, I've seen Mamoswine paired with like Florges, and you want another answer for like water and or fighting. So a dragon would be a third good pick for that. So yeah, I think I kind of named a lot of the viable Pokemon that you would probably expect to see in Master League Premier. It's almost like the top 20-ish Pokemon on rotation, and depending, again, like I said, to summarize everything, you want to pay attention to what elo you're in and what teams you've been facing in the first or second set, and you want to accommodate with those type of teams to something that you can counter that. I think a Pokemon too that would core break the Rhyperior and the Prima, or at least the Fairy Water types, is going to be Chestnut. So that's another odd pick, or even Venusaur. But those are very spicy and kind of RPS-ish. So you want to be aware of like two other Pokemon that are going to be very strong to accommodate those. But if you can get a Chestnut or a Venusaur against a Rhyperior or a Prima, you're pretty much golden and you can win pretty well. But it gets pretty hard walled against a Dragonite. But yeah, like I said, you're going to see a lot of like Gyarados and Metagross, probably Gyarados and Snorlax types of teams. Or seeing the old tried and true Snorlax, Florges, Gyarados, or even, like a Dragonite and Metagross kind of a core, because Dragonite is still very strong. Going back to Magnezone and Gyarados is still pretty strong as a core. And like I already said, Rhyperior is going to be very strong with the Prima core, and Gyarados Waterfall is going to be usually paired with Double Charm, or at least a Fairy, which is typically a Florges. I think if you want to run Golden Go, I would probably say pair it up with the Water type, which I think the first pick is going to probably be Prima with Waterfall, just because it's going to have a pretty good typing and resistance against other Pokemon out there that you face. That's just going to be very well. Maybe also you can argue for Alligator instead too. But I think that's going to be pretty interesting. So a Golden Go weak against fire. You want water, so Gator Prima, or Prima with like Dragonite or another dragon type of Pokemon. I think Dragonite's just going to be your better bet, because you still want an answer against Rhyperior. That's the biggest thing you want to think about. So your grass type won't be a good answer, because then you're going to be ABA weak to a fire type, with Skeledirge is really going to be the only fire type of Pokemon that you want to pay attention to. Or the spicy Shadow Electivire with Flamethrower, which can put in a punch, but you're not going to see that as much. And then once again, if you're wanting to throw a fire type or fighting type of Pokemon, I would say Machamp Conkeldurr as either one or two of those Pokemon paired with the Fairy type, which I would say Florges, maybe Togekiss if you don't have a Florges at this point. I think Florges would be a better pick, and then sometimes either like a Dragon or Steel type as its third would be pretty decent in itself. And if you want to probably run a team that counters a Rhyperior Fairy, I would say you can possibly do like Gyarados with a Gyarados or a Dragonite lead with a Metagross or another Steel type in the back, which I think Metagross would be a better pick because of the fast move of Bullet Punch. And I think that's really about it. It's a pretty interesting meta, without a doubt. It's still pretty condensed, but if you can kind of pick up the similarities that I've already talked about in this episode, and you can kind of flip and flop some teams, or come up with an ABA style team and play things a little bit differently depending on what you see. But that kind of really sums up like Master League Premier in a nutshell. So I would definitely pay attention to streamers online through Twitch or YouTube or TikTok. But I would definitely say go on Twitch and you'll see some battlers playing Master League Premier, and you can start picking up some team ideas as well and see how they play it. Because again, Master League Premier is very driven upon alignment more than anything, and also energy management as well. And you really want to be very balanced with your shield management as well too. It's very difficult to go down 2 shields against an opponent that has 2 shields and try to win a game. Unless you have so much energy, then you might be able to flip the game around, depending on which Pokemon has 100 energy, basically. So, but yeah, it's once you get the hang of Master League Premier and you kind of do things a little bit outside of the ordinary ways of playing an open league type of gameplay or strategy, you can see the consistency of climbing in Master League Premier. But just don't get too focused on just alignment. and because if you do, it's gonna be one of those things that seems like it's a very RPS type of league, which it can be if you play it out like normally. So, but yeah, that's about it. So I might play around a little bit this week, depending on schedule. I cut out streaming today just to take a little bit of a break, just to work on some freelance things from my trip from California, good old LA tour. But maybe for another day, I might talk about it. And but yeah, that's really about it. So I said that like 4 times, but yeah, have a good day, good night, wherever you're at. Be nice and kind to others, and I'll see y'all on the next podcast type of episode of Pokemon Go Battle League.